While taking English 1302, I did come across a lot of different things that I really didn't consider in the past. There were a lot of aspects to research that I guess I never really considered, and I lacked. I definitely did lack in these subjects. Three really big ones that I kind of felt were more important to me specifically in my research would be research processes, integrating secondary sources and writing with authority, and learning with your peers. These three, out of all of the, I guess, different possibilities to research, I thought that they affected me the most in the sense that I gained the most from them. My research processes were honestly pretty weak. Integrating secondary sources and writing with authority, I never really knew how to implement my secondary sources. I mean, to be honest with you, I wasn't even sure what the difference between a primary source and a secondary source was. I wasn't very sure how to differentiate the two, what I was even looking for, to be honest with you. And learning with peers was also something that I gained a lot of experience with. Normally, the way that I would do the whole learning with peers was very different. And this time, I got close to certain people in the class. The peer evaluations helped a lot, giving each other feedback, asking each other anything that we thought about our work that wasn't very good, and getting feedback. So those are the three things that I am going to discuss during this, and I guess I'll start with our research processes. So when you're doing research, the word research itself kind of, I guess, confused me. Like, well, what exactly was I looking for? So when I realized that the development of a question was a huge thing, I didn't even know how to build a question from analyzing a problem. So how would I develop this question for a problem? Getting that across correctly, asking the right questions, realizing who is this even going to impact. I needed to find an audience, and will it really impact them? Is this research going to be meaningful? Because at one point, whenever I was conducting research, I found it wasn't meaningful. And I was definitely shifted in this class to learn, I guess, that when you're doing research, the point is to benefit others. You're trying to give them information that they wouldn't have otherwise. And that's like the whole good thing behind research. And English 1302, taking this class actually really did help me in the way that I would identify topics, the way I would start off choosing a topic, developing a question for this topic. Mine would have been the serial killer question. And it was just, it really helped me. Like, it helped me find different sources for the researching. For example, here are my four sources. All of them, I analyzed what the purpose was, the situation, what was relevant to these sources and how they were going to benefit my research process. Because that's one of the most important parts, having good sources that kind of helped your research, and would they even be meaningful to my audience? That was a very big thing for me. So when I was doing my whole research, I started looking, through um, different sites, looking for different possible questions, different, like, what question could I formulate in order for a serial killer question that could benefit everyone. So that was one thing that was very important to me. And my final research question that I came across was how criminal psychologists research and identify serial killers and their tendencies. This was a question that I formulated after doing a lot of different research that I applied and thinking, and just finally coming and realizing that how are criminal psychologists going to do this? This is who we're talking about, but the audience would have to be students or criminal psychologists. The fact that I'm talking about criminal psychologists, they already probably know what they're identifying. So my audience, and specifically, was going to be for those studying criminal psychology, or anyone in the criminal justice field that's a student. So the research processes were actually really useful. Like, there's a lot of insight that I gained that I wouldn't have had otherwise. Crafting things like my um, source sheet. Let me see where that is really quick. My crap sheets, for example, those were very useful. They really helped me kind of depict, like, my research. Kind of, do I want this? Do I not want this in my paper? So it was something that I really did appreciate, because I never really considered all of these things. They're all very relevant information that you do need to understand in order to choose your research. It's very vital. And this brings me along to my second topic, integrating secondary sources and writing with authority. Now, what does writing with authority even mean? That's something that I didn't really understand until I took this class. When you write, I learned that you want to write, with like authority. You want them to understand what you're saying. You want to have a trustworthy source. You don't want something that's kind of like, oh, like, do I believe this? Like, this seems kind of shady. They're getting funding from someone, or just a source that isn't trustworthy, because a lot of people lie nowadays. So when you as a researcher, you need to write with authority. You need to make sure it's the best possible research you can do. And integrating secondary sources are really, really important, because these secondary sources are what allow you to build this sort of um, word, and so people can understand your research and believe it and trust it. That was also something that I was very unsure of when it came to primary and secondary sources. I wasn't sure what the difference was until I started searching through it, and Bonnie explained to me kind of the difference between a primary and how it's raw. And a secondary, it's not as raw. There's more opinion in there. It could be opinion, could be not. It's just they're very different, and their uses are very different. I even learned how to formulate my own um, primary source. For example, when I come over here to my actual paper, I learned to formulate my own table with interview questions. These are possible questions that benefited my research. These were things that I saw when I was doing my documentary analysis. These were common questions found throughout many interviews when I was interviewing these analyzing these documents. I'm sorry. And so I even learned how to formulate my own primary research apart from finding raw information such as statistics, such as things you want in your paper, such as things that benefit you in ways that it's found, it's accurate, it's known. Those are what give you, a good umph to your paper. So learning the difference between secondary sources and primary sources was also a really, really big thing for me. I really, really like, now I feel very confident in the sense that I'm able to differentiate between the two. Apart from that, credibility. That's a huge thing that I really, at one point, was kind of unsure of. I thought something was good that wasn't good, and now I can really see how I was very blinded into the fact that it was a bias. It was kind of like a confirmation bias. You just kind of believe it, but is it worthy? You as a researcher need to make sure that everything you're doing has a purpose. So, for example, I'm going to show you two different secondary sources. This is a Psychology Today. So as you can see, the Psychology Today, it's a news article. It's pretty reliable, you'd like to think, right? Here we can see we identify Berit Borgard, DM in science. She has a PhD. They have a picture of her. They give you her degree. They tell you when it's published, the name of it. Here's some good information. Studies that Universe has conducted with workable links that you can click on and actually take you to some other place that can find credibility as well. So there's just lots of it's trustworthy, about the author. You see, we can see some of her previous works. She's a professor in philosophy. She directed the Bogard Lab, so we trust this. Her Facebook, her Twitter is there. There are methods to contact her. It's just it's trustworthy. Here it shows you who wrote this. Here's the second author. He's a graduate student from University of Missouri St. Louis. It shows what he's worked on, his contact info right here. So you just know that this is trustworthy because there's doctors behind it, and research students. So it's not some random dude on the side of the street telling you something about serial killers or your research topic that, isn't relevant whatsoever. And now I'm going to show you an example of a bad one. So if we're looking for a bad source, here would be one. Quora, which is kind of like a Reddit, I guess you could say. It's not very, there's going to be trustworthy information on here, but there's also going to be information that are kind of like random. Here, someone asked an original question. What makes some people serial killers? Vance Board, he has a picture of like a past president, super random. He gives information and stuff, whatnot, but that's it. There's no relevance. There's other people giving opinions here. There's, multiple people, but do we see any sort of credibility? Do we see contact info? Do we see his name. I mean, anything relevant, his credentials. The other one showed that it was from university. This one is just a random dude. We don't know who he is. Like, it's just a little bit more shady. We can click his name. Maybe it takes us to him. So he's someone, like, he gives different opinions. Not so much any information. Not even a real picture of him. Just some dude from the older times. The 1800s. You're not too familiar with this. Yes, he does have a very high viewers, but I mean, besides that, there's not much that gives us about who he is, anything to believe his word, his research. Is his research trustworthy? I'm not sure, so I'm not going to put that in my paper. I'm not going to use his information as a secondary source because there's no authority there. I don't even know who this person is. Who are you going to believe? A doctor or just someone who's telling you something? So when I learned how to do this through research, that was something huge. I'm going to be implementing that so many different ways. Now, when I'm in my nursing degree, my nursing plan, and when I'm going for my MD, I definitely know like what research is. It's gonna come down to a point where I'm gonna have to write really big papers, and now I know how to separate good stuff from bad stuff because it's just you need credibility. That's something undoubtedly important. That's just something you can't avoid. Um, the third topic is learning with peers. That's also something that just like really I wasn't too good at before. But now I kind of did learn a little bit better. I made friends with some people in the class, talked about different issues that kind of went on. Learning with peers is really important because I mean, anywhere you go, of course you need to have your own good information, but anywhere you go, you're bound to interact with people. We're social beings. It just happens. So working with peers is very, very, very important. And that's something that I kind of learned in this class. Like feedback was something that I never really got, or like people didn't really care. And in this class we did care. We made sure everyone we look, for example, here. I was confused. I kind of left a question. I got some really good feedback. They actually helped me find out who my audience was. At one point, I wasn't sure, is it the criminal psychologist? Is it the student? Is it just a general person? And after kind of like getting good information from Giovan and Orlando, I realized like they're right. Like my paper's probably going to be based on those who were studying like criminal justice majors, prepping to go into the field as a detective or a criminal psychologist. These are who my research is going to be impactful to because they're the ones trying to understand this information. If you're asking a professional, I mean, they're going to already know what they're doing. So I thought that peer review is really, really useful. It really helped me, and that's an experience I never had prior to this. Another really, like for example, let's see, an issue here, another one. An issue that I had stumbled across was citing. I never really knew how to cite because this one had multiple authors, and through someone answering me through peer review, I got a good answer. I realized, okay, so that's how you're gonna do this. I would have been kind of stumbled upon. I would have been stumbled without the peer review. I wouldn't have known how to do it so as much. I also gave peer review. Here's a really big one too. So through peer review, I was informed also that I was missing a lot of primary development. That was something that I was kind of blinded to, and I fixed it. I realized, you know what, like this is something that I'm gonna need to do. Like it needs to be done. So that was something really big. Like I was helped a lot through peer review. I wouldn't have really considered that beforehand for sure. I mean, just working in general with people was really useful. I know me and Brittany, we were always bouncing off of each other with ideas, kind of like, what are we gonna do? Like, what do you think of my work? It's very important to work with one another as a team. It really is because without that, I mean, it's hard. So there was many different things I learned in this class. Those were three of the really big ones again: research processes, integrating secondary sources, and writing with authority, and learning with peers. Those were the three that I felt spoke to me the most. I lacked on those the most. Now I know that I can search for things much more accurately. I can differentiate things that I wasn't able to before. I learned how to work with peers a lot better, especially when it comes to writing and taking ideas that I might not have been so open to before. So there's a lot I gained from this, to be honest with you. My research skills are on another level compared to what they once were.